have to put in hard work, but there's only one of you. And if you run yourself to the ground, there's not going to be another one of you. So I think time has been the cost. Has it been worth it? Absolutely.
You know the version, right? First generation Latino attorney, the Midwest, the LA to Midwest, right. Dynamic.
Assistant General Counsel at Versiti Blood Health Inc. We are a blood health innovation, a nonprofit organization.
Because AI, and I think you should probably put this as a blurb somewhere. I've always said this. The problem with AI is that people think it is truly intelligent.
Sometimes I will put in an email knowing that I don't have any sensitivities or now at Versiti we do have a closed system, and I will ask it. I'm like, am I being too mean to this email? and thankfully it'll tell me, it's like, yeah, you need to relax. I'm like, all right, fine. So then I rewrite it.
Welcome to Bottom Up, a monthly podcast dedicated to issues and topics of interest to young lawyers in Wisconsin and beyond. I'm Emilio Villagale.
And I'm Kristen Hardy, and we're your hosts. This is the Bottom Up Podcast.
So I think it's really cool that we actually play the intro every time before we start live, because I think people don't realize that. So what the audience just heard is what we just played before we started.
That's actually the old intro, though.
Why did you really?
Remember we made a new one?
What
I just forgot to put it in there.
So this is all fiction. This is all a mental thing to get me mentally ready.
It's getting you pumped up.
Getting pumped up. All right.
Hope you don't lose the tune. That's a good tune.
I picked it. I still remember when we picked it. It was at an annual meeting, and you gave me a couple of things to try, and I heard that one. I think it sounded more Afrobeats.
Yeah. I like it.
I told you I was looking for something that had some Afrobeats in it, and that was what you came up with. Tells me a lot about you.
I don't know if I would go Afrobeats on that one, but all right.
Oh man, it's been a while. Happy podcast day. Today we have the pleasure of having with us attorney René Jovel, and René Jovel is a classmate of mine. Sometimes I feel like one of the best parts of this podcast is the abilities to reconnect. I feel like they were with my old classmates.
You've had several of your classmates on here.
It's a good class.
Coincidence. It was a good class of 2014 and Milwaukee class of 2014. There's a version of René's story that I think fits neatly into press releases, and in coming up with this podcast and kind of reviewing things again, I wanted to look. I looked at you, René, from a perspective of someone who didn't know you, right? And that was really hard because, having been in law school, gone to law school with you, kept in touch afterwards. I know a lot about you, at least to some extent. But you know the version, right? First generation Latino attorney, the Midwest, the LA to Midwest, right. Dynamic. And, now you're also, I think you're now an adjunct professor, you're already in-house, you're deputy general counsel in a nonprofit. You had worked for Senator Tammy Baldwin. And all those versions of you are real, and I think really amazing. But I also think that, and as I looked through your stories and just thinking about you, I think the most interesting version of you, the most interesting aspect of your career so far has been this intersection between René, the individual, René, the Latino American, and then René, who's also politically engaged, and then René, the attorney. And this non-linear path in which your story, or at least the way you've weaved into it, has gone. So as you sit here today, I kind of want to ask you this: as you navigated all those different identities, what has this what has that journey actually cost you? And it's a very, very weird way to start, because I remember the last interview I watched of you. You said, and then someone asked you for, how'd you got into law, and you I'll never forget this phrase. You said, you're one who you don't particularly believe that anyone needs a hero or villain,
that's right,
or a story to get into the law, right?
Yeah.
So what did that journey, that path, what has it cost you so far?
That's a fascinating question. That's a really good question. Yeah, the hero origin story or villain origin story is one that I tell my students, especially my undergrad students, because they want to know, what do I need to do to go to law school, or why did you get into the law? And I have a very specific, well, for me, but I know that a bunch of people have reasons to go to the law. What does it cost me? I got some gray hairs. We'll start there. What does it cost me? That's fascinating.
Well, I mean, and I think we don't have to answer that right now.
Yeah.
To probably just percolate on that as we think through, because again, a lot of these interviews and a lot of these podcast episodes are always about that.
Yeah.
Hear the villain, the hero story, the villain story. There's something else to say. You don't need a hero story. You don't need a villain story. There's something else. You don't need an origin story too as well.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I was like, damn it, man, there goes the script. Can't do a hero villain. So I was like, all right, well, how about if we frame this along the lines of,
well, I think I have an answer actually. If you don't,
what did it cost you? And what was it worth?
Yeah. It's been worth everything. I think the cost is something that took me a while to appreciate, and how much I was paying in the currency. So I think about time. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite movies is Interstellar. Interstellar talks a lot about a lot of things. One of them being time and how time is precious. And time is one of those that there's something about once you go from like undergrad to law school, time becomes precious in a way. And especially if you go into the legal career, right? Regardless of what part of the legal career you're in, there's always a need for your presence or what you're bringing to the table, right? So I feel like time, for me, up until around COVID, and I've talked about it before about mental health and all of that, I think time was, I was constantly putting so much time into my job or just work or trying to make it fit. And that was like the priority and sort of ignoring a bunch of other things. And I feel like I was forced to come to terms with, well, time is always being charged. So what type of time or what type of currency of time am I going to give in? That I think has been something that I always try to tell even my law students, like, be very cognizant of, yes, you got to do the work. You have to put in hard work, but there's only one of you. And if you run yourself to the ground, there's not going to be another one of you. So I think time has been the cost. Has it been worth it? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, we're going to go into some of those benefits.
Yeah.
And I know you don't like the origin story concept.
Yeah.
But I want to start with a kid out in LA because I want to really flesh out these various elements of your life. Let's start with a kid out in LA. Like who was he? Like who was that kid? Like, what was René like in LA?
Yeah, little René in LA. So I grew up. So my parents are from El Salvador, right? Going into that, you don't need the origin story. My parents are from El Salvador. Both came during the Civil War. Mom came in 80, dad came in 81. And both got amnesty, not to get political. Both got amnesty from Reagan in 85, 86, I think. So born in 87, grew up, parents working a lot, sort of having to figure out how to be self-sufficient, and only child. So self-sufficient, figuring out pretty much everything along the way. So Spanish is my first language. Everyone around us spoke Spanish. LA public schools, or I had a bilingual schooling that then became English only. So having to figure out English, having to figure out how to be sort of both Latino and American at the same time, how to be Salvadorian, how to be American, Salvadorian, Salvadoran American, like trying to figure out all of that. But throughout all of that, this idea of like having a community, and helping each other, whether it was Little League sports or in school or like at a church, even if it wasn't our faith, just like another faith needing some sort of assistance for us to go there. Going to visit, my family always makes fun of him a bit. So I have an uncle. So everyone from El Salvador came, and then everyone crossed the border. And then my uncle got to TJ and was like, I think I'm just going to stay here. Like never passed over. So he's now a full-on Mexican citizen, but he still lives in TJ, has a clinic down there. And even as a little kid, we didn't have much growing up. And you don't realize until much later how little you have. But even then, still like trying to figure out, hey, does anyone have an extra shirt or whatever to bring back to Mexico? Because there are people that have it like worse off than you do. So all of that is just percolating and bubbling up in a cauldron to get what you have today.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Wilmick is both steward and strategist. For 4 decades, they have preserved the values that define Wisconsin's legal community while advancing coverage that reflects today's risks and tomorrow's challenges. Founded by lawyers, guided by experience, and committed to the future of legal practice across the state.
Hi, Russell Nicolay here with Nicolay Law, Accident and Injury Lawyers. If you have clients that have been injured, my office would love the opportunity to help them get compensated and get their life back on track. We handle referrals and co-counsel relationships on injury cases all across Wisconsin.
Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up podcast.
So growing up in LA in this multi-ethnic place with this rich story, carrying the back of that history, carrying the weight of that history, I'm trying to figure out where the law came in. What was your first interaction with the law, the legal profession? Was it something that was inputted in you? Hey, you had to be a lawyer. I know in certain immigrant households, that's a thing, right? Yeah. In Nigerian households, there are only 3 professions that are recognized, at least initially. The rest, it's not like they wouldn't recognize them later. Yeah. You had to be successful in them, then you convinced them, right? Yeah. So I see all these Nigerian athletes and movie stars, and they all tell you the same thing. Yeah. Like, my parents came along after we were successful at it. Yeah. So I'm trying to figure out, so growing up El Salvadorian and in an El Salvadorian household, was the legal profession one of those professions that was looked up to, or at least your first memories, you guys were just trying to just find your place in America first before even aspiring as to what you could be in it? Yeah,
so it's a little bit of both, I'd say. I think we probably share, our cultures share at least 2 of the professions. It was lawyer, doctor. And then I had this random, like, little kid dream of wanting to be like a pilot, like an airplane pilot. And I think my mom was always like, "Yeah, that's fun and all, that's cool and all, but think of the other 2." So those were always generally there in terms of you have to succeed in school, right? And I always got my parents made it. My dad made it through high school. My mom didn't make it all the way through high school, and it was always I had to stop this so that I could help feed our family and then leave. You don't want to go to school, but you don't realize how much of a blessing it is that you can go to school and go to this thing, right? So for me, that trying to figure that out was always there. But the law, man, so I feel like, not to say that other communities don't, but immigrant communities, they help each other out, right? And it's like every single different wave of an immigrant community that comes in, it doesn't have to be Salvadoran either, like any different wave that's coming out, you're trying to figure out a way to help. And I remember as I start remembering some stuff as a kid, people would talk to either my parents or my aunts and uncles who had been there longer, or compadres who had been there longer, and they would know what lawyers to go to. And there was always the well, why are we just going to these, few lawyers? And it wasn't until much later that I found out it was the amnesty. The reason I brought it up before, it was the amnesty that Reagan gave that actually led or allowed my parents to stay here, but mainly my mom. So my mom, she was here and she went to a lawyer. Couldn't find a Spanish-speaking lawyer in LA. Couldn't find one at the time, early 80s. Couldn't find one. And she went to a lawyer, and then coming to find out, lawyer barely filed something, and she got a notice of denial. And I saw this stuff after I did a FOIA request. Because eventually, once I did immigration law, and I was like, what was it? And
was it an application for amnesty?
No, it was the guy filed application for permanent residency, straight up permanent residency. No underlying basis application, nothing. He just was yeah, I will file for a green card. which he did, but like barely. The information was completely wrong. Was filing the wrong thing.
Your family's first interaction with the American legal system was through legal malpractice.
Yeah,
was by a lawyer committing legal malpractice.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Wasn't even a lawyer. And that was the other thing. So
illegally practice.
Exactly.
An individual committing a felony of illegally practicing law.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I did a good amount of work with Senator Baldwin around this thing because it still happens. So in Latin America, the term notario, right, can be anyone from a notary to a lawyer. In the U.S., that's just a notary. And notaries are great and fantastic, but they can't practice law, right? So even now, we will see people come to this country, see a notario and go, oh, that person can file my paperwork.
Yeah.
And there were a ton of people that were, even when I was in Senator Baldwin's office, that were still getting scammed. And we were trying to do good work to try to help these folks. So that was like we got to the hero origin story, I guess, but that was it.
Yeah. So and I think that's very important because so it sounds like from even as a child or growing up, you started hearing these stories of the implications of representation and why it matters, and not just representation, right? Competent representation, and I mean we're lawyers, so that word representation means two different things, or at least that are equally as important in this context, right? Actual representation of competent lawyers, and representation in terms of a lawyer that understands the nuances of a certain community and why that matters. Because, and I think it's very timely today because, across the world or the country, there's this idea that representation or diversity or equity isn't as important, right? So your first, at least, family stories or interactions with the law was seeing what that could, the harms that could lead to.
Absolutely.
And while, I don't know if you remember going through this, but while your family was going through this, were you saddened with the idea, or at least did you wrestle with the idea of, hey, there has to be a better way, there has to be a solution? Did you know what that was called? Did you know if there was a path? Did you know if that was called the legal system? Or you just had this profound sense of, hey, this is wrong and there has to be a better way? Or was it just, we experienced it, kind of kept it at the back of my mind, and then later on I would remember that as a reason to do what I do?
It's a bit of both. There's a side of me that was always interested in the arts. We talked earlier about like the profession that your parents would maybe be okay with, right? So there's that side of what I want to explore. But yeah, the entire time I'm like, there has to be a better way to do this. And so my mom is a house cleaner, and she has been doing that pretty much since she got here. Now she only has a few left that she'll do occasionally. But one of the families whose home she cleaned, the husband, he was a lawyer. And that was my first interaction with like a lawyer who I didn't necessarily meet as a lawyer, just slowly started seeing like, oh, this is what you do. You go to court, you do cases. And he did criminal defense work. So that was like my first sort of inkling of, oh, there's this. And then I remember in high school, shout out Cathedral High School in LA. In high school, so my high school was primarily Latino. And we used to have a career day. But career day was, they really tried very, very hard to get alums from the school so that you could see like, hey, it's possible for you to go and do something else. And that's where I remember like early, like, oh, there are Latino lawyers out there that have come from Cathedral and have gone and done other things. So as that's happening, that's where I sort of start putting some dots together.
Let's talk about Northwestern. So you leave LA, and I think you said you're going to Northwestern University out in Chicago was the first time you had ever made it that far east.
Yeah.
So, like, how did that come to be?
Yeah. So growing up, we only traveled to El Salvador like once a year, or if someone was sick or dying, essentially. And the furthest east I'd ever been, I think, was like the border of maybe Nevada and Arizona, because we had family friends who had moved out to Vegas during the hotel boom. So they went from LA out to work the hotels in Vegas. And when I was going to leave high school, I remember having a conversation with my parents, because most of my friends, like their parents were like, no, you got to stay here, your family, all of that. And I remember having the conversation with my parents of like, I don't want to stay in LA. I don't. I love y'all, but I know this country's gigantic, and like we've never been able to travel. Like I would like to apply outside of LA, and I remember having this conversation with my parents, and they were like, "That's fine. You like can't come back as a quitter, right? You got to go and you got to succeed and all of that, and not forget that we're here, get on a plane, all of that." So the closest I applied to were Santa Barbara and San Diego, but I applied to a ton of the schools in Midwest and out east. And had never been to Chicago. I know now that Northwestern, the day before or the week before admitted students day, they plant like fresh flowers, fresh greens, all of this stuff. So because they flew me out, and I remember going there in April, and it was like 60 or 70, and there were flowers everywhere, and I was like, oh, this is what Chicago's like. Yeah. Did not expect the snow or cold the following year. But yeah, I figured like if there was ever going to be a time that I was going to be able to explore, it was then, and LA would always be there. I could always go back to LA, and just took the leap out to Northwestern.
So when you get to Chicago, right? So this is the first time, you're leaving LA. There's a struggle. There's a struggle story there, but pretty much LA, very cosmopolitan. You grew up in a Latino community. You talked about in high school seeing, on career day, seeing everything you could be and the possibilities. And so maybe you it sounds like you're shielded at least from that doubt that sometimes the average immigrant kid could sometimes experience at the initial phases. Yeah. Because you saw what you saw the possibility, right? So now you come to Chicago. Yeah. Right. I'm assuming Northwestern wasn't an exclusive Latino enclave. Yeah. And so now you've seen the promise. Now you have to deal with the realities of what that promise could look like. Yeah. Did you feel like you belonged from day one, or was that something that you also had to reconstruct? Because you've always been very, like, you're one of the most dynamic people I know, and I remember in law school you could operate in any environment with any sets of folks. You were very culturally fluent. Yeah. Was that something you had to reconstruct in Chicago, and did that come under attack? Yeah. So I think, and I benefited from my middle school experience. So I was essentially a voucher kid, and I don't know if vouchers are a thing out here, but it's essentially, right, like if you are a smart kid, the state will deem that like where you could go is not up to par for you as a student. So we're going to send you to a private school instead of funding the high schools, right? So so I got offered to go to Chandler Middle School in Pasadena. I was one of 3 Latino kids in our class. I was the only first generation kid. So the culture shock happened in 6th grade, because I went from Aldama Elementary, which was in my neighborhood, pretty much all Latinos, to Chandler, where Chandler is also very wealthy, like very, very wealthy. I think for middle school, I think at the time it was like $20K a year for middle school, and I was getting a free ride. Yeah.
I talk about this when I left Goodwill. One of my early interactions with Goodwill was having to have like quote unquote new clothes, because in summer school, I had to go to summer school and it wasn't free dress, and all these kids had very nice, very brand new clothes, and my wardrobe was just uniforms, like that was it. And so that is what helped me get to the sort of culture shock. There's also this thing where and I get this from my parents, is that you belong in whatever room you go in. You have to belong in whatever. If you're going into that room, you have to belong. Now, is it always going to be comfortable? No. Are you always going to potentially succeed in that room? No. Right? But what you can control is you feeling like you have to succeed in that room.
So you're saying you already had like a mini testing ground in middle school.
Yeah.
And so coming.
Oh yeah.
Come going to Northwestern, you didn't have to reconstruct much. You just had to pull from.
I had to pull from middle school, because it was kind of the same thing except much bigger. But it was like Pasadena and Evanston, very, very much alike, very wealthy neighborhoods. Northwestern, school has like 10,000 students. I doubt there were 1,000 Latinos.
Can I ask you a question about that? So, the wealth and identity, right?
Yeah.
So I went to a middle school and high school in Nigeria where I didn't have to deal with the identity issues in the sense of everyone predominantly was Nigerian, but I was also one of the poorest kids at my school. Yeah. Right. I went to private school. My parents really just wanted me to have the best, and they had things, but they had to sacrifice, right? Yeah. As a matter of fact, at the time, if you wanted to know what the new cars were in town, you come to visiting day at my boarding school, right? Yeah. But, my dad gave us this idea that, hey, you show up the way you show up, right? Yeah. Then I moved to America, and I had to deal with a different, dynamic. Similarly, in the sense that, yes, things were not necessarily the greatest then. My mom gets better off socioeconomic status, but I just learned the language of that. And then you deal with that identity issue, right? Or where you're othered, or you become the other, right? And in middle school, it sounds like you're dealing with both. Can you speak on that interaction? Because I think in an either or, and the reason I say this is because in the larger context of these social normative conversations, people are always talking about, hey, is it a class issue? Is it a race issue? And all that stuff. And so I have my thoughts on that, but I wanted to, in terms of the dynamic, do you think it is easier to bridge that gap of being othered if you're dealing with people of the same socioeconomic class, or it doesn't matter? Or how do you see that dynamic playing out?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question, because I think the difference, one, I remember early on, shout out to therapy. I've dealt with this in therapy as well, right? Early on in my days in Chandler, I was like, I'm not going to tell anyone that I'm poor. Like no one's going to know that I am at a disadvantage, right? From them. And it wasn't until my last year there that I met this other Latino student's dad, who was like a grown-up version of me. And he was like, I know what you're doing. Like he had a very, very legitimate conversation. He was like, I know what you're doing. My son doesn't get it, but I know what you're doing. And he's like, and it's fine, but know that you don't have to, and it's going to work out. And I think but what's interesting is I never felt like there were students at Chandler that were out to make me feel less than. It was almost like I went in there, I knew that they were well off, and I wasn't going to let them know that. But even as I got better friends and like they started knowing where I came from and my status and all that, it was never like, oh, you're the poor kid, which was interesting. Maybe that's just children or kids. At Northwestern, though, there were definitely people that swung their wealth around. And I feel like the only way you can bridge that, right? So getting to your question about bridging, I think you can bridge it, but at some point you also have to be the sort of stopping force to that swinging around of wealth, because something has to stop that momentum for you to actually have that conversation. So by the time I got to Northwestern, I was like, this is who I am. This is it. Like we were slowly starting to get better off as well. But it was I'm a poor brown kid from LA, and this is Northwestern. I know it's very expensive, and y'all live in very nice areas. Let's talk and figure this stuff out.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Hi, Russell Nicolay here with Nicolay Law, Accident and Injury Lawyers. If you have clients that have been injured, my office would love the opportunity to help them get compensated and get their life back on track. We handle referrals and co-counsel relationships on injury cases all across Wisconsin.
Wilmec is both steward and strategist. For 4 decades, they have preserved the values that define Wisconsin's legal community while advancing coverage that reflects today's risks and tomorrow's challenges. Founded by lawyers, guided by experience, and committed to the future of legal practice across the state.
Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up Podcast.
Isn't it funny how it feels like kids and people become meaner the older they get?
Yeah.
If you even think about it, I mean, so even my daughters, they go to I would say a very diverse school now, but it's private school, and I think it's more diverse now. At least their class is more diverse, which is very fascinating. It's more diverse because a generation, right? My generation is more diverse. In terms of populating economic spheres, right? Yeah. Which is so funny because if you go to the high school, and this is kind of the trickle effect of representation and why upward mobilities across races matters. If you go to the high school where their parents are probably in their 50s and 60s, or some of them, right? It gets less diverse the higher up you go. so it's great. It's the positives, right? Because it tells me that the world, at least, I know it may not always seem that way, is getting better. Yeah. But I remember the very first, days of elementary school, my daughters would ask certain questions, and the way kids ask questions is very observational, without judgment. And one of the things I had to learn was not to impart or project my own, because the world kind of scars you up. And I remember, the first time my daughter comes back from, I think it was gay for, like, hey, I have this friend, and her hair is yellow. And then, as a black parent, a lot of things run through your head. You're like, oh my God, she can't believe. Is this the time I tell her, hey, love your hair, love your. And I was about to start vomiting that nonsense. And I'm like, wait a minute. She just made an observation, right? And I remember the day she came back, and, she tells me about one of her Indian classmates. Like, hey, there's just like food she always brings in class. It always smells this way, right? And again, I go into act. Oh, hey, no, you have to respect all cultures. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, this is a 3-year-old making an observation. Yeah. And I was just like, hey, it's curry. It's the spice they use, right? And it's really good. Do you want to try it? Yeah. Without the speeches, but I think in the way we react to things, you see how we get more messed up. Yeah. The older we get. Yeah.
Let's talk about law school. So we went to law school together, and actually some of the things you just said is so informative. And actually, it's helped me understand the why of you a little bit more, as I'm really glad about that. But I want to ask you this question, like, as a stranger would. I don't want to. So we talk about we all talk about what Marquette Law, did for us. We talk about what the study of law does for people, right? But what did law school do to you? Not what it did for you, what it did to you, because it's not always, in my opinion, what the brochure says. And I think sometimes as lawyers, we may oftentimes not be willing to name or express the cost and the worth in very real terms, right? Because it's easy to look at things, look backwards and say, oh, that's great, right? And that's why I started the episode talking about, hey, I want to not talk about what it's done for, but what it's done to. Yeah. So what did the law school experience do to you?
So I think 2 things. One, man, and I try to tell this to the students in my undergrad, it beats you up. And I don't know the PG rating on this, so I don't want to curse, right? But it
We can bleep it.
It messes.
I would like for people to actually say things that
Yeah.
they could bleep out.
Yeah.
So people could have the reality.
Fair,
Just understand
fair.
that we're
Yeah.
human beings.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
We just don't. It's a very disjointed way
Yeah.
to live life where, you know, you
Fair.
only spend 8 hours a day
Fair.
not trying to pretend like you don't curse, but
Yeah.
then you spend the other.
That's fair.
You know,
Yeah. I think the FCC gives me one curse word, right? So like, it beats the absolute out of you. It just does that first year.
That's not a curse word.
That
shit,
first,
is it?
right? That first year, especially that first semester,
Yeah.
right? Because brochure doesn't explain to you the curve. Brochure doesn't explain to you the amount of reading that you're going to do. It doesn't explain to you just how insane that first semester is, and it beats you down, and then builds you back up, which is weird. Which I don't know who designed this process where I think it beats your like brain to a pulp, and then it's like, okay, now we're gonna build out this lawyer, and it works. The sad thing, or the maybe not sad, but the kind of messed up thing is that it works. So I remember at no point did I regret, and at no point was I like, oh, I'm gonna quit. No, at no point did that happen.
Hey, immigrants don't
Yeah,
quit.
yeah.
Did you? We talked about your experiences leading up to this.
Yeah.
Did you have an idea when you went to law school of what you thought you might want to do?
A little bit. So I had been doing immigration law for 2 years. So I wanted a place where I could continue exploring immigration law.
In what capacity?
What I was doing before?
Yeah.
I was a legal assistant.
Okay.
At a firm in downtown Chicago that, man, talk about, I did it for like 2.5 or 3 years. And that place was brutal, absolutely brutal. Taught me how you should and shouldn't treat people, which was also nice. But even that, I was like, okay, maybe I want to do immigration law. Maybe I want to do criminal law. At no point was in-house ever in there, like at all, until the summer between 1L and 2L year. But I knew that I wanted to help. Like whatever I could do to help, that's what I wanted to figure out in law school to get to that point of helping, so that if someone goes to try and find someone, there's at least someone that may look like them or maybe speak their language as well. So I think that's what I was thinking of when I went in there.
Renee, tell listeners about your current role and then your resume from law school moving into your current role.
No, certainly. So I'm an assistant general counsel at Versiti Blood Health Inc. We are a blood health innovation, a nonprofit organization. So everyone knows us for our blood banking, but we also do diagnostic labs for physicians and hospitals. We do organ procurement and transplants, clinical trial work, and we have the Versiti Blood Research Institute where we do research for all sorts of blood diseases and blood issues as well. I've been there almost 7 months. And then prior to that, I was at Goodwill of Greater Milwaukee, Greater Milwaukee and Chicago. Started there as a staff attorney, built up the legal department, and then moved my way up to deputy GC. And then before that, I was working for Senator Tammy Baldwin.
Okay.
Worked there for three years, and I was a constituent services in her constituent services department.
What does an attorney work in for a company like Versiti in-house? What does that attorney do?
Yeah. So, I'm still in my crash course of being there for 6 months, but it's so on the contract side, it's contracts for pretty much everything that you can think of. So contracts for the machines that we use to draw the blood, contracts for the machines that analyze the blood, split up the blood, make the blood products. So plasma, platelets, individualized cells or individualized type of blood that is potentially has a certain type of antibody. All of that is part of the research. We're also doing compliance because we have to follow FDA rules. We have to follow a bunch of CAP-CLIA rules, a bunch of other rules about blood. And then I also have contracts with the hospitals or the VAs, or we have this awesome thing with the city of Milwaukee where we can put blood products and blood into like ambulances. So we can start that blood transfusion before you get to the hospital when it may be too late. So we do stuff like that. And then there's the employment law side. So we have around 2,500 employees, and it's anywhere from your day-to-day employment law issues to consulting agreements, research agreements, research and data transfer agreements, and then a bunch of contracts on our clinical trials, because we're either helping clinical trials or creating kits for clinical trials and working with diagnostic labs. So it's just a lot of contracts and relationship building with a bunch of these organizations, and also ensuring that hospitals are prepared with blood for day-to-day issues, but also in the day and age that we live in, unfortunately, now that if a mass casualty event happens, that we are prepared to respond to something like that as well, so that we can try and save as many lives as possible. So that's kind of the big picture.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Emil before we started.
Yeah.
But when I think about an in-house counsel, I think of the traditional path of you go to law school, then you work in a firm for a while, litigation or whatever, and then ultimately you go in-house. But so you didn't do that.
Yeah.
And you talked about in law school thinking about doing immigration work or criminal defense work or something like that. So how did that change for you? How did you end up going in-house and doing these things?
Yeah, 'cause you didn't even go to traditional legal role right out of law school.
No, I was working in firms in law school. Like I was working for immigration firms, I did the public defender hammership. So I was,
shout out to Professor Hammer.
I was cutting my teeth there. Shout out, and then I did a bit of legal type stuff with Tammy, more so on the international law side.
Yeah, let's talk about that experience, because so you were working for Senator Tammy Baldwin, of Wisconsin. Everyone's out here looking for they work for a law firm or work in house, or you work for a senator right off the bat. Yeah, without necessarily. I mean, I kind of, because initially when that happened, I'm like, I can see him being a politician. He's got that. I mean, he was class president. So what was that like? Was that, did you just find yourself in that role? Was that something you actively sought?
So I always joke that I combined theater and like my political science backgrounds and combined it into becoming the lawyer that I am today. I've always been interested in politics. I remember as a kid being in a protest in El Salvador because the part of the village that my parents were from wasn't getting water from the water companies. So like, I remember being in those protests, doing those protests. I remember I've done protests, I've worked elections. So like, I always thought about politics. I had done some work here in Milwaukee during my time here, mainly on the immigration side, like doing some talks, talking to a bunch of people. And I was recruited. Tammy had been recently elected, and she still had some of Herb Cole's awesome staff, but they were also starting to think about doing something else. And they were looking for someone that could do their Department of State, Department of Homeland Security work, but also maybe have some legal background. And I believe they had spoken to Rebecca Lopez, because she had done some of that work too. And I got recruited. I'll never forget, I got the job the day before our Trust and Estates final. And I remember we were in a study room, and I got like the, hey, you have a job. And I was in a study group, and I was like, I'm out, guys. I'm going to go to the bar and celebrate. I was like this, and I got an honors grade in that class. And I think because I went into that final just like, I'm good.
What was the day-to-day like? How were you able to use your legal skills in that role, and like what types of issues did you deal with?
So one of the things that the beating down of the brain thing, and I tell students, like, what are the things that you learn? We take it for granted that like issue spotting in real life is incredibly valuable. Like we learn how to do issue spotting in traditional legal sense, right? Like you read a case or you read a brief, or your client comes in and tells you something. But for me, the issue spotting was pivotal there, because it was either a constituent comes to us, and that constituent, doesn't matter if they voted for Senator Baldwin or not, that constituent comes to us and says, I have this issue. That constituent can be a singular person, it could be a company that has issues here, and then it's me figuring out, okay, where can we help? Who do I know at what embassy or consulate or whatever else, or over in DC now to help this issue? Or is there an issue here that we can then relay to our legislative folks to see if there's a legislative fix that we can figure out? And if it's not full on legislation, are there other avenues? Are there letters that we can write? Are there questions that we can bring up in congressional hearings? So it was that part. And then it was a good amount of the getting to know your constituents, going out there and talking to these folks. So, I went to, was it Central Rapids? I can't remember the name now. But in the middle of the state, I would travel to the middle of the state. I would go to Wausau, up to Green Bay, down to Racine, Kenosha, and just talking to folks about what are the issues that you see every day? How can I help? Or who do I know that I can get you to help? And what was great about that role is that my role was nonpartisan. So I had awesome counterparts in Congressman Ryan's office that I used to work with. I used to do awesome work with, may you rest, John McCain's office. Like, didn't matter which side of the aisle, the constituent came first. So that was really, really great. And that's usually what I did day to day. But I had some, if anyone's watched Trapped Abroad on like National Geographic, that was also me. If you were stuck in a
is
country,
it Trapped Abroad? Is it Arrested Abroad
or something like that? Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like that. That's the stuff that I did. Yeah.
Wow.
If you got arrested abroad, or if you got stranded abroad, or something like that, that was you. You called your senator, and that was me trying to figure out how to get you out.
Wow.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Are you an attorney looking for a unique opportunity to make an impact while living in a close-knit community? The State Bar of Wisconsin is proud to introduce the Rural Practice Development Program, an exciting initiative aimed at improving legal services in underserved rural areas across Wisconsin. Each year, 3 attorneys will have the chance to relocate to designated rural communities, join or establish law practice, and receive a financial stipend to support the transition. This program is more about just practicing law. It's about building meaningful relationships with your community, immersing yourself in local life, and addressing the critical gap in legal services for rural residents. Some program highlights include relocation to a rural community and practice law for at least 2 years, a $10,000 stipend along with free access to State Bar Pinnacle books and CLE events, plus the opportunity to join our referral service program, and offering added value of $5,466. Establish lasting professional and personal connections, and help improve access to essential legal services in rural Wisconsin. Employers, we need you too. Law firms, nonprofits, and government organizations, this program is also for you. Help support attorneys as they integrate into rural communities and create sustainable legal practices that will serve these areas for years to come. Are you ready to make a difference? Learn more about the Rural Practice Development Program and how you can be a part of this transformative effort by visiting wisbar.org/rural practice development. Join the State Bar of Wisconsin in strengthening rural legal services, one community at a time.
Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up Podcast.
So to Joe's question, and I want to make sure we don't forget the prompt too as well. You didn't have a traditional path to in-house, an in-house role. We've had on the show people go from law firm to in-house. We've had people go from law school to in-house. I think we've never had anyone on the show, on the podcast, go from law school to a government position, a legal adjacent government political position of sorts. Or I know you say it's apolitical, but I'm using political in a very loose framing there. Community engagement style work to in-house.
Yeah.
How did that matrix come together?
So shout out to the diversity clerkship program.
Okay.
Because through the State Bar and through, I think Madison and Marquette do it, which has also survived, which is great. Because that was my first taste of in-house. So the summer between 1L and 2L year, I signed up for the diversity clerkship and I was selected to work at Freighter. And I worked at Freighter that entire summer. And that was my first taste of there is something else out here that I can use my degree to help people, right? And that was a hospital. So I was doing contracts. I was going to malpractice hearings. I was part of audits. I did a week-long shift at the ER with the social services because they were like, and that's where I got the idea of you have to get to know the business to sort of know what you're working on. So I got to experience that, which was your social services, an emergency happens, you have maybe 4 minutes to ask all of the things that you need to ask in a way that hopefully isn't going to get the hospital sued. Because, and I remember having this conversation with one of the social workers. She was like, I only work with legal when I get in trouble because we're getting sued for some odd reason. And she's like, this is great that you're here because now you can see I only have 4 minutes. You can give me a script, but I don't have a script, or I have to ask this question while someone is getting undressed and cut up and connected to a bunch of things. So my time at Freighter was absolutely fantastic. And when I remember leaving, so mine was one where you didn't have a job after. There were a few of the diversity clerkship that would give you some sort of extension, but this one didn't. And it was great. I got to work and get paid, but realistically it opened up this brand new avenue. And I kept in contact with those folks at Freighter. And from there, I sort of started to get to know their networks of other folks that did in-house work. So anytime there was someone at Marquette that would come to a talk that was an in-house or working for a company, I would go, pick their brain a bit. Like, what do you do? Do you also do this? So, I got incredibly blessed to end up going to work for Senator Baldwin. But once I was thinking about going elsewhere, I wasn't really looking for a firm. Firm life is great. My wife is a firm lawyer. You're an awesome firm lawyer. But that's not the path that I wanted, because I remember the work that I had done at Freighter, and I remember the work that I had been doing in Senator Baldwin's, right, which was sort of like in-house work, right? You have one client. It happens to be over 5 million people, but your one client is the constituency of the senator, and in-house you have one client. It's either I always like to say it's the logo. If I'm in a room and I'm talking to an employee, I'm not here to represent you. I can't represent myself. I'm representing that logo, that Versity logo. Or when I was at Goodwill, it's that smiling G. That's who I'm representing. So yeah, it's the diversity clerkship that thankfully I was able to get that experience, because I didn't have an in-house lawyer that I could go and get to know and talk to.
There seems to be a trend, Joe, we spoke about this right before the show started, of these certain entities growing the size and the depth of their in-house departments. And even some companies taking work in-house and litigating. Traditionally, it's always thought of that, hey, when you got, when there was a real problem, because you guys are on the burbs, you send it to us in the ghetto and in the fields. You call it
never
being nice. We call being in the firm world the ghetto and the projects.
That's where I'm from, so it's all right.
But I, at least from my vantage point,
Yeah.
I'm seeing in-house departments grow their benches and also grow their depth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that's occurring in your? Is that something you've seen? And if so, why the change? And how's that going to change the in-house, outside counsel work dynamic?
Yeah, I can only speak for me as a nonprofit lawyer. For some pretty large revenue-based nonprofits, all the information is out there, so you can find the revenues for both of them that I was working with. Larger than some privately held companies. Differences are stuff goes back into our mission, to our bottom line. The outside counsel relationship, at least the way I see it, is never going away. Because for a variety of reasons, right? One of them is I always like to joke that sometimes legal is the bad guy, right? Or the bad person, right? Legal's the bad person. Where if a sale isn't going to go through or something's going on, I always say, I'll fall in that sword. Just tell them legal told you that you can't sign it and you got to talk to me, right? At some point, I need someone to be my bad person, right? But it's also time, right? I go back to this idea whether you planned it or not, right? Maybe you incepted me, right? Of time, right?
Yeah.
Time, if I'm in-house and I have a certain amount of time, I know that the amount of work that goes into, or I have an idea. I'm not going to say I know because I don't do it, but I have an idea of the amount of work that goes into actual litigation, right? The prep that goes into litigation, because when you're on with a judge, right? Like you're on, right? And so much time goes into that. I have to know about our blood supply. I have to know about all of our contracts. I have to know if there's an audit by the FDA. I have to know all these things. And I have to think about, well, sure, I can build up my bench. And I did at Goodwill. But it's to get us to a point where our person knows enough so that when it goes to outside counsel, we can have a conversation with outside counsel about the strategy, ultimately deferring to the lawyer that's litigating it. But I want our person to know and have an idea of what it's taking. So for me, outside counsel will always be there. I, however, want to have a relationship, and it's not about like wine and dine me and all that. I want to know, who the outside counsel lawyer is or the relationship person is. What's their bench like? Do they care about my company?
So I just want to be specific here. Yeah. You would agree that there has been an uptick in companies growing their in-house bench. Yeah. And also one of the things that I've seen is that law school to in-house route being a lot more popular, I would say 10, 15 years ago, right? Yeah. So if I understand what you're saying, hey, it's not necessarily to reduce reliance on, it is to reduce reliance on outside counsel, but at least for the arbitrage work. So do I think about it as in an ER department and what an ER department does and how it fits into the hospital systems and all? I could be talking out of my behind on this one, but basically in an ER, you don't know what you're going to get. Yeah. Right. But you need to be able to arbitrage that correctly. And so was it that in-house or at least companies were outsourcing, in fact, maybe some of that initial arbitrage work? Yeah. And so now they're saying, okay, hey, well, we could put a Band-Aid on it. We could see if you actually need that knee surgery. Yeah. And then if you do, we're going to send it out. Is that sort of the change that's
Absolutely. I'll use like an EEOC claim, right? If an EEOC claim happens, when I first got to Goodwill, it was always going to outside. And I just thought to myself, well, what is the work that's going into this? Like, let me see the work to determine if I can or can't do it. Yeah. Right. And what I was seeing was it is a lot of work, but I hopefully would know our employees, and I could at least do a response brief to the EEOC, maybe do the first mediation. But once if we don't win there and now it's fully going to the EEOC, I'm dishing it out to that specialist because I know this is their bread and butter. This is what they do every single day. So the bench for me is, taking out sort of that intake, the simple is not a good word for it, but that intake stuff that we could hopefully do in-house and reduce that outside counsel bill and save that money and not have heartburn paying that potentially high legal bill for something like you're going to be on like actually litigating this thing.
And don't cut this out because I think this is important. It's important for lawyers to also kind of know how they fit in this new world of legal services delivery, because what I'm hearing is maybe outside firms, and I think a lot of outside firms are getting this, you need to stop focusing as much on the low hanging fruit items in terms of the services or the values that you provide to an in-house company, because especially with the advent of AI and things of that nature, I expect more value-driven billing. And so it's saying, hey, no, I don't need you to front load and bill me like crazy, even to the extent I even want your thoughts on an EEOC initial case. What I may need you for is when we actually have to go to court. Yeah. And I think understanding that also helps law firms and outside firms position their services.
And also, like, if you're an expert in something, tell me you're an expert in something. I just had this one right now where it was a patent royalty issue, right? We have a blood research institute where we are working with, we have our own investigators, but we're working with MCW and other locations. And a question came in about like what happens with the research if this does become, a pharmaceutical drug.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, nope, no clue. And I will tell you, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know.
Yeah.
I went to our firm and I was like, I need someone that knows patents and that knows medicine and that knows drugs. And they were like, it's gonna cost you. I get it. Like, I don't know this stuff. I get it, but give me that person. So the value is, are you an expert, and are you gonna just do the work that I need you to do? That outside counsel thing is just never going away.
Yeah. I'm gonna cut that out.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
This is the brief on the 2026 Wisconsin Solo and Small Firm Conference. Running a solo or small law firm usually means you're stuck wearing, well, a million different hats. But an upcoming Wisconsin event is designed to prove that you absolutely don't have to do it alone. So first, mark your calendars for October 22nd through the 24th at the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells. Think of this event as a much-needed pit stop for independent lawyers who are constantly running the exhausting marathon of solo practice. It's a real chance to just pull over, refuel, and get back on track. Second, once you're at that pit stop, it's time to upgrade your engine by securing your required continuing legal education credits alongside some great real-world strategies. Because honestly, why keep banging your head against the wall with outdated tech when you can just grab the absolute latest practice management hacks directly from the experts? Finally, we really have to highlight the most crucial survival tool of all, and that's community. Look, solo law practice can be incredibly isolating, right? Meaning this peer-to-peer networking is arguably just as critical for your firm's survival as the actual educational credits. You're going to connect with fellow Wisconsin lawyers who actually understand your unique daily challenges. So make sure to register right now at wisbar.org/WSSFC. Ultimately, this conference is your all-in-one weekend ticket to completely upgrade your firm's toolkit, earn your credits, and build a community that genuinely gets what you do.
Thank you. And now back to the Bottom Up Podcast.
Because AI, and I think you should probably put this as a blurb somewhere. I've always said this. The problem with AI is that people think it is truly intelligent. And I think that conversation, I think, is important because there is a whole lot of, from the firm life, we're looking at companies build their benches. We're seeing them hire on neuro lawyers. We're seeing them have divisions within their legal departments. There's AI, and everyone's like freaking out, like, what do we do? Like, are we going to be useful?
And
to companies anymore?
The AI thing is funny because I've taught contract drafting at the law school.
Yeah,
and I do legal research and writing for undergrads, just giving them a taste of what it's like. And for both of those classes, I remember throwing in a prompt to my AI, and what it dishes out is garbage, like absolute garbage, right? It gives you like maybe something, but we had that when we were in law school through Westlaw and Lexis in their libraries, right? We had better versions of that. So
they forget it's in the name. It's artificial intelligence. So if a person who isn't intelligent uses AI, it's still artificial intelligence. Now, when smart people or thinking people use AI, it becomes EI, enhanced intelligence, right? And because even if you think about the way it does, it's a large language model. So basically, it puts words together based off of associations of those words, right? And so now as a litigator, I think I'm sitting pretty good. I'm just like, I've experienced the jury. I've experienced judges. For as long as those human beings are in those systems, AI ain't crazy enough to do.
I'll be honest. I use AI sometimes when it's been a long day and I'm writing an email. And I always joke, one of my paralegals, we did the Key and Peele anger translator.
translator.
That's what I use AI for. Sometimes I will put in an email knowing that I don't have any sensitivities, or now at Versity we do have a closed system, and I will ask it. I'm like, am I being too mean in this email? and thankfully it'll tell me, it's like, yeah, you need to relax. I'm like, all right, fine. So then I rewrite it. The Versity clerkship was helpful because that's where I knew that I had learned some stuff, because I remember being in there and being like, oh, this makes sense in a way that Had you given me this a year ago, I don't think it would have.
Exactly. It's so funny though. It's funny to hear that people do the same things with the Copilot. So we have our enterprise Copilot models that built into our Outlooks, and I grew up in a very direct communication style culture, right? And so I just communicate very directly. I'm not one who necessarily believes in, hey, I don't care about your day. I really don't care about your day. Think you just one of my favorite things I used to get from my boss, my first boss, like when I worked in a law firm, was he would just send me an email that says, "Handle this." And it was, and I loved it because it was so direct. Yeah, there was no please. It was just handle it. I'm like, all right, it is my responsibility. So it's helped me, tone me down a little bit. Yeah. But I was just so happy people do the same thing because I'm like, man, like, cause especially with clients, like, this is what I really want to say. Now put this in a way that won't get me a bar complaint. All right.
Yeah. I love my internal folks, but sometimes I'm like, this is the 7th time we've been going over this. I don't know what I'm doing, man.
That is funny. So we talked about law school. We talked about your upbringing. We talked about your current roles. But you didn't answer a question I asked initially, which was, I'm like, what did law school do to you? I know it built you up and all that stuff. Yeah. So you go into law school, you're smart as hell, right? Yeah. You're so smart. They flew you down to Northwestern, and you were that smart, right? Yeah. And then you come into law school, and then you got to deal with all these new things. You got to deal with a curve and all of that stuff. Yeah. Did that take the glimmer out of your eyes?
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Freaking lootly. Funny is law school is what made me realize I needed glasses. I'll never forget being in the back row of a room and being like, I don't know if I'm about to faint because I can't read the room or I'm blind. So I had to go to like Walmart to get some pair of glasses and figure it out. But yeah, that first year absolutely beats you just down. And again, I never was the I'm gonna quit or I don't belong. But there are definitely times, especially in the winter, it's terrible out, and you're just like, what the hell am I doing reading about the King's Court right now? Like, what, why am I doing this? Or why am I, why do I have to figure out this outline or all this random crap that it's brutal. And there are times where you're not sleeping or you're sleeping terribly and you're anxious, you're trying to figure out your cold calling, all of that stuff, but yeah, absolutely beats the hell out of you.
I like what you said though about it then building you back up. Oh, yeah. Because I think going through law school gives you a certain confidence when you're approaching new issues. Just with my job, I look at things a lot differently and how to approach a problem or a challenge, and I know that I can figure it out just because of the tools that I received in law school. Yeah,
it's all that issue spotting. Like I was saying earlier, the issue spotting about figuring out a problem, even when I was at Senator Baldwin's, like that's all that it is. And I met my wife in law school, so like I can't say I fully regret going to law school, right?
Shout out,
Amy Smith. Shout out to Amy. Yeah, so like I met her in law school, right? We were in the same section, so something positive came out of there.
Did you ever feel like you were going to go back to LA? So what kept you here in Milwaukee? Was just, did you grow to really like the city, or?
Yeah, so the closest I came to going back to LA was in between Northwestern, like right when I was leaving Northwestern, because I got a job at that firm like the week before I had to figure out a lease or something, and I got a job, and I was like, okay, I have a job, so I'll stick around here. And then when I was applying to law schools, that's when I started thinking about maybe going back to LA. Yeah. So I applied to some schools out there, but one of my best friends is from one of them I met at Northwestern, who is from Cedarburg. And when the school, Northwestern, would close during breaks, and I couldn't afford to fly back to LA, I would come up here, and a group of us would like stay at his parents' place, and that's how I got to learn about Milwaukee. And we would come to Brewer games, and we would go to random areas around town, and got to know Marquette. So that is sort of why I was starting to think about Milwaukee being a good option.
We had another guest from LA, Mike.
Mike Sneathern, the general counsel of the
yeah.
Bucks. Yeah, he does go back to LA quite often.
Does he?
More than Renee does.
I go like twice a year.
You do?
I'd say, yeah. Yeah, my parents are still out there.
Oh, that's great.
No longer in my neighborhood. My neighborhood is completely different now. Way different.
You know, I love the fact that you're eccentric. You've always been. You have all these different interests. That
Yeah.
for example, you're a big WWE fan, and you know, you could every time there's SmackDown or Raw in town. You know, you probably be there with a mask on and all that stuff. And you've always been that way.
Yeah.
And I oftentimes wonder how you've been able to not allow the profession mute you. You know, I was going through your LinkedIn. You still post a goofy photograph of you in the office.
Oh, yeah.
And the person that I see, we've been lawyers now for 12 years.
Yeah.
You know, the person that I met 15 years ago is still the exact same person sitting here in front of me. And I think it's a very real question, because we do know the profession, and we know, at least we think we know, and we know sometimes the demands it sometimes carries, and people don't come out of law school, come out of the profession at least being able to express themselves and still keep those aspects of themselves.
Yeah.
How have you done it?
I gotta say it goes back to parents and communities, and I don't want to make it into like a, you know, whether you're American or not, right? Because you know, I both have U.S. soccer jerseys, right? We'll wear the red, white, and blue. But I think for me, my parents were always, this is who they are, this is who their story is, and this is us in LA, this is us in America, and we're not necessarily going to change who we are. And for me, that was always you belong in every room that you're in, and you only have so much you can only do so much, right? Especially to maybe fit in some of those rooms, but there's a lot that you can control, and who you are and being comfortable is one of those things. Both of my parents are very loud, will talk to anyone, especially my dad. My dad will talk to anyone. My dad, when we got sworn in, went up to, when we got sworn in at the Supreme Court in Wisconsin, he went up to Justice Abrahamson and just started talking to her. As we were leaving, I remember looking back, I was like, where's my dad? And he's just up there talking to her. And I was like, what are you guys talking about? And he was like, oh, I was telling her about how I'm from El Salvador, and like, I'm so proud. And I was like, what? How did this happen? He was like, I just, she's there. So like, and she was so cool about it too. So like, that's always been there. And if I can bring in some joy or something out of who I am when I go into a room, I'm going to leave my mark, whether they like it or not, right? And I don't know. It's always been there. It's almost like I don't necessarily think about that part. It's just who I am, and I try to tell my students, even in my legal writing class, don't try to be a Supreme Court justice. Don't try to be someone that you saw on Suits or Lincoln Lawyer, right? You are you. You write how you write. You talk how you talk. Yeah. Will you have to code switch sometimes? Maybe.
It's called wisdom.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But like, you are who you are, and you got here because of who you are. If you've gotten this far being who you are, why change it?
I'll ask you one last question.
Yeah.
If you go back and talk to René Jovel, the kid out in LA, you go back today, what would you tell him?
It's going to be okay. Study for the LSAT a bit more. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to ask for help and to have fun, to have fun. I think later now I'm trying to, my wife and I, and then, with my parents, I try to have experiences. And that's one thing that I wish I started doing much, much sooner, is to experience a bit more. So it'd be that.
Well, thank you very much, René, for coming on the show. Congratulations, brother, on everything you've accomplished.
Thank you.
It is a pleasure having you. And shouldn't wait for a podcast to bring us up, bring us together. Besides you sending me crazy, Man City bait stuff on Instagram, Arsenal will win the league.
Unfortunately.
We are taping this in April of 2026. You will call Arsenal champions. But
I will do no such thing. I will do no such thing.
For our guest, René is an avid Manchester City fan. That's the only flaw I like in his character. Thank you very much, brother. It's a pleasure, and congratulations on everything you've accomplished, and I look forward to seeing you do more.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. Congratulations to you. This is a gorgeous building. Shout out to Axe Point. Thank you for having me. And it could be worse. You could be a Spurs fan, right?
It could be worse. I could be a Spurs fan.
Yeah.
We don't wish that on our enemies.
No. And if there are any Spurs fans listening, you know where to find me. You know where to find me.
Oh, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for listening to our podcast. If you have a topic you'd like us to explore, let us know. I'm your host, Emil Oviagele, and we'll catch you next time.